This is The Raid, exposing the dark world of America's deportation machine. I'm your host, John Carlos Frey. On the podcast today is Annie Nolte-Henning. Over the past decade, Annie has launched and operationalized refugee programs across the globe and led teams across the Americas focused on community sponsorship, protection, and community building. She's currently the executive director of Community Sponsorship Hub, an organization that makes it easier for communities to welcome refugees and other displaced people. They do this by connecting community partners at the national and local levels with the knowledge and financial resources they need to ensure that sponsors and those they are welcoming are set up for success. Annie lives in Minnesota and is on the podcast today to speak about her work with refugees and the state of Minnesota, given the recent enforcement tactics by federal agents and how the community at large is doing. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just start with what's going on today or yesterday. I'm reading a memo from the administration about refugee status and about work and about, no, I'm sorry. It's not about work. It's about green card holders. If you don't have a green card and you've been in the country for a year as a refugee, then you are eligible to be deported, which to me sounds ridiculous because a green card holder has to stay, a refugee has to stay in the United States for at least a year in order to be able to qualify for a green card, right? So just, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know the memo that just came down from the...
I know what you're talking about.
Can you talk about that, and then we'll talk a little bit about your work, because I know it's right in line with this.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think the important distinction made here is about refugees, right? Yes, I was at the federal courthouse in Minneapolis yesterday for a hearing that is asking for a preliminary injunction. There's a temporary restraining order that has ordered federal agencies to release all refugees and say that they cannot be detained. But yes, the memo that you are referring to came out Wednesday and it says that refugees can be arrested and detained for an unspecified amount of time if they have not applied for their green cards. And as you just said, it's quite the conundrum because you cannot apply for a green card until you've been here for a year. And they are saying you can be arrested if you have not applied for a green card and you've been here a year. So there was a lot of questions about, the judge asked a lot of questions about this yesterday in the hearing. I think the judge, just like all of us, was as confused and asked the DOJ attorney several times, like, what's up with this requirement? Do we have examples of refugees who are failing to appear to their green card interviews? Like, why are we thinking we need this requirement? And the attorney couldn't give one example. And this is despite being asked several times. So I think that there's still there's lack of clarity around it. And I would assume that we will see, them challenging it as soon as we get more clarity. But yeah, it's bananas.
You deal specifically with this population, refugees, people with refugee status, people who are having to flee their home countries because they have no alternative. So can you just tell me a little bit about your work? And then I want to ask you about this hearing that you attended, but I want people to know exactly what it is that you do.
Sure. So I'm the executive director of the Community Sponsorship Hub. We were founded in 2021 to help build and resource a system where communities, not just governments, can help resettle refugees. And this is due to the fact that there is a staggering number of displaced people around the world, and no one country would ever be able to solve the displacement crisis we have. And so the idea is community sponsorship is to be able to expand our country's ability to resettle and welcome by welcoming not just belonging to institutions, but by people and communities themselves. And so as the hub, as our name implies, we work across governments and civil society and diaspora groups, universities, businesses, philanthropy, to help build and then implement these type of programs. And really, we've received bipartisan support for this, for community sponsorship, because it's a public-private partnership, right? It's private citizens and Americans who are raising their hands, who are providing financial support, footing the bill for resettling these refugees, and then doing the hard work of fully integrating them into our communities so that then refugees can contribute back. And just like the rest of the U.S. refugee admissions program, our program was suspended after the inauguration last January. But there are thousands of sponsors across the nation and in Minnesota that continue to do the work to welcome and protect refugees.
When you say your program was suspended, you're saying that federal dollars that used to go to support this kind of work were cut off.
Correct. So CSH, along with a consortium of partners, implemented the Welcome Corps. It was the first private sponsorship program in the United States for refugees, and we had resettled 4,500 refugees. They all came through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. But last January, after the inauguration, the program was put on a stop work order and then ultimately suspended. So yes, our federal dollars were cut off. And the entire refugee admissions program was shut down. And since then, there's been travel bans. So for all reasons, it has decimated along with the entire resettlement program.
So just to kind of get an understanding of how it works on the ground, if I am from Afghanistan, let's say a war-torn country, and we agreed to invite a certain number of Afghans to the United States, your organization, if they came across your interface or came across the work that you do, would help to resettle them, would help them acculturate, would help them to understand customs in the United States, help them with language difficulties, maybe helping them to find a job, helping them to make this a home. Is that the work that you do?
That is. The most important link, though, that you're missing is that we help mobilize private citizens like you and I to form what we call sponsor groups, and they shoulder the work. So if you and 4 of your neighbors or book club members or colleagues wanted to form a sponsor group, you could raise your hands. My organization would work with the federal government to match you to a refugee family who has spent, decades waiting for resettlement, who have gone through the stringent background checks and vetting. And then you would raise the funding that is needed to help find temporary housing, get kids enrolled in school, help parents find a job. And then you're committing to spending at least 90 days, but as we know, it's often much longer, to really help the family get settled and get integrated and feel a part of the community.
You're asking me as a citizen to be neighborly, basically.
That's what I'm asking you to do.
To welcome in the stranger and to help wherever I can as your neighbor.
That's exactly it.
So if I go back to the ruling or at least the court hearing that you went to about the administration trying to, what looks to me, to revoke some form of refugee status, to pin them in a corner, which is an impossible corner. Refugees, for the most part, by the time they get to the United States, have applied, have been vetted, have background checks. I mean, this isn't an easy process. So if you are in the United States from a foreign country with the label refugee, for the most part, this vetting process that the administration is talking about wanting to redo, or at least take a look at refugees right now in the United States who don't have a green card and possibly deport them, this is kind of double duty, or it doesn't even make sense because they're already criminalizing people who've been through the ringer.
Exactly. And I heard the attorney yesterday, the plaintiff's attorney, kept using the word bizarre. And I totally agree with that, because it is quite bizarre. We heard back in November that the government wanted to revet and re-interview refugees that came, what I call Biden era refugees that came during the former administration. And that's about 200,000 individuals. And these are people who they came through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. They were referred into the Refugee Admissions Program based on being able to meet the definition of a refugee, being persecuted for, a slew of different reasons. And these are people who went through years of vetting and security checks by multiple federal agencies. And then they were invited to the U.S. by our government. So it's bizarre to be invited in and then told, by the way, we want to not just re-interview you, we want to check your refugee claim again. It's bizarre, and it's frankly very scary.
It's very scary in that they're trying to declassify or to remove the protections for refugees because they have to stay in the United States for a year before they can get a green card. Oh, by the way, the federal government wants to deport you if you haven't yet gotten your green card. It just feels like another group of people that the administration can go after. That's my words. I don't want to put those words in your mouth, but it feels like another group that's going to be vulnerable.
Exactly. So we have 5,600 refugees in Minnesota that we know are under target for this reason. Most have applied for their green cards, right? So as you said, this odd little window, right, of you cannot apply until you've been here for a year. Now, also keep in mind that in last November, the administration suspended the adjudication process for green cards. So we are asking refugees to apply for green cards knowing that they cannot be adjudicated right now, that they are putting themselves into a backlog. Many people have been fearful of even submitting applications because it puts their name out there. Nevertheless, people have, because of course, every refugee wants durable status, right? They came here because they want to ultimately be able to be U.S. citizens, and they have a durable pathway to do it. So that's the whole the idea that people wouldn't go to their green card hearings or their green card interviews. It's bizarre, and it's frankly hasn't happened. Just like the attorney could not prove yesterday. But we do know now that they are saying if you have not applied, or if it is in a backlog and we just haven't, either received it or it's been processed, we can detain you, and we can detain you for as long as we want until we decide otherwise. And so, as I said, I imagine we're going to see it be challenged over the course of the next few days. But there's a lot of questions. And of course, this temporary restraining order that we received about 2 weeks ago, we got at least there was about 100 refugees in Minnesota that were detained, transferred to Texas during this time. After that temporary restraining order, we believe all refugees have been released. And for the most part, the government has been abiding by this temporary restraining order. And it gave these refugees a little bit of relief, right? They said, okay, at least now there is an order that says we can't be detained. It's hard to believe that. But this memo that came out on Wednesday, it's just stirred up the fear all over once again.
Is it my understanding, or do I have it correct, that if I am refugee and I qualify for refugee status in the United States, I get to the United States, if there's talk from the administration about a possible deportation or sending you back because we're going to revet you, I don't get to go back to my country of origin. I've already left that country because it's on fire. There's nothing there for me. I'm trying to get into the United States because of that. I don't even have the opportunity to go back to the country that I came from. Is that right? Am I barred or banned from returning back to the country of origin?
I mean, I think you can be sometimes, but other times you're talking, in order to be a refugee, in order to meet the definition of a refugee, you have to be in outside of your country of origin. So I'm a sponsor myself. I sponsored an Afghan family in September of 2024. They, as I said, they're from Afghanistan, but they spent 8 years as refugees in Turkey. If they were asked to be removed, or received a notice of removal, going back to Afghanistan is sort of a death sentence. But then also, it's not like Turkey became home either. Right. So it truly is like, where do you go at that point? And as you said, they fled for a reason. It wasn't for economic prosperity or education. No, they fled because they were persecuted and hunted, and many feel like they're dealing with the same thing now. I never thought I would hear this, but I've had 2 Afghan families recently ask if we could help them self-deport and go back. And what one said was, at least we knew what the Taliban is capable of. We no longer know what our country is capable of. We no longer know what this government is capable of.
There's one more thing that just came across my desk today, and I apologize if I'm making you my news person here, but I'm wanting you to know that applications for employment authorization based on a pending asylum application have reached a historic high. The U.S. government, now this is from UCSIS, is basically not allowing people who have come here with an asylum claim to look for work. They're going to be retaking a look at asylum claims now in the same vein. It seems like there's no way to use the United States anymore as a refuge. That seems to be what the government is trying to do here.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think we're trying to make it as inhospitable as possible. And that's hard, right? You take away people's ability to work, that's going to put a lot of communities and cities in a whole heck of a lot of hurt, right? I mean, I cannot imagine losing that number of workers in our small towns and cities. But it's very volatile. It is so volatile, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you're an asylum seeker or a refugee or a permanent resident or a citizen, for all that, for what it matters. But it is incredibly volatile right now, and it feels like every single day, they're chipping away a little bit more at our country's values of being a welcoming country.
Just for the audience to get the terminology straight, an asylum seeker is someone who can no longer stay in their home country for reasons of persecution or for whatever it may be. And some of those would qualify for a legal status in the United States. If they qualify, they have to apply to come to the United States. A refugee would be somebody who has been granted that kind of freedom or that access to the United States. A resident would be somebody who is not a U.S. citizen, but is legally allowed to be in the United States. And then obviously a U.S. citizen is someone who has full rights in the United States. Did I miss anything in that?
I think the only other distinction is many asylum seekers seek asylum once they use port of entry, once they're in the United States, and then have to go through the process. Refugees go through all vetting when they are still overseas and then are admitted into the United States.
Great, that's a good distinction.
You did pretty well.
Okay. I'm having a little with your audio, but I think that's also just the buffering on the or internet. No, I hear you perfectly fine. Your organization and what you've been doing for a long time is the exact opposite, if I can say that. You have an organization that wants to welcome people. You have been trying to welcome people and set up systems across the globe so that people do feel welcome. I think that what we've seen in your state and in Minneapolis is the exact opposite. I'm trying to figure out, even for myself, what happened. I mean, There's always been sort of a scapegoating of immigrants in the past, and politicians have for a long time pointed their fingers at classes of people or ethnic diversity as a problem, whatever it might be. But now it feels like it's on steroids, and I can't quite figure out what the flashpoint has been. Why all of a sudden are we seeing this aggressive, obviously in your state? Do you have any sense of what happened?
I mean, Minnesota's always been on the forefront of refugee resettlement. We are a very community-driven state. We were supporting refugees during the World Wars and after Vietnam, and I mean into the 21st century, right? We're the leading state for sponsors of refugees, and this isn't just in Minneapolis or the Twin Cities. This is in our rural communities too. We had the most applications of people like you and I who raised their hands to say, I want to be able to welcome refugees, which means we have over 1,000 sponsors who have welcomed in just the last 2 years. They've also raised almost $1 million that have gone back into Minnesota communities. But I think that some other things that are just part of this, right, is like, I mean, we also have a governor who unsuccessfully ran for vice president. We have over 100,000 Somalis who live in Minnesota. We know how the Somalis have been targeted, but they are part of our social fabric, right? There are teachers and our police and our doctors and our childcare providers. I think Minnesota's always been known as having a really strong social safety net. We haven't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since 1972. We have the highest voter turnout. I mean, we know how to show up, but apparently we also know how to piss people off. And I think the thing that the flashpoint we've really heard about is fraud, right? Everyone is like, well, this is because of fraud. I haven't seen the through line, and I haven't heard a convincing argument for one. I truly do believe it was just the narrative to justify sending 3,000 ICE agents here. But I'll be the first to say I'm a taxpayer. I'm pissed off about the fraud too. I think that there needs to be more governmental oversight. I think that we need to hold the defendants in these cases accountable. But you're talking about U.S. citizens. So when you say, oh, there's been a lot of fraud, especially of our Somali community, and we're going to send in ICE, it doesn't add up, right? Like there's just, it doesn't make any sense. And what I will say as a taxpayer of Minnesota is having ICE terrorize our schools and, transfer our residents to Texas just to send them right back is also really not a good use of my taxpayer dollars either. So I do think that there is a lot of different reasons of why Minnesota was targeted. But I really can't stand by the narrative that it is because of fraud.
If it's not because of fraud, and you're saying that U.S. citizens were actually targeted in this sort of fraud, this workup to a fraud rhetoric that brought 3,000 ICE agents into your state, I'm wondering if the fraud was perpetrated by white people, that it would have caught the attention of the administration.
I am still waiting to understand what fraud looks like in other comparable states, right? We know Ohio and I think Mississippi. There's a few different states that they've really been looking at too. There hasn't been a good comparison, and I'm by no means saying that the fraud is, a conspiracy theory. It's real. We have there's been a lot of cases. We've tried and convicted a lot of people for it. But I don't know. I mean, I think that it started with the fact that, there was a lot of our defendants were from the Somali population, which really just got the wheels turning for the rhetoric coming out of our president's mouth of, the Somalis are garbage, and they all are fraudulent. And then it's been a slippery slope of full blown federal occupation in Minneapolis.
There seems to be, maybe it's not even so hidden anymore, an othering of immigrant. Immigrant means criminal. Immigrant means other. Immigrant means dark person, Spanish speaker, foreign language speaker, criminally intended, somehow over on the margins of society that somehow are stripping us away of our, quote, American roots. So that always seems to be what's fueling a lot of this. I mean, I'm hearing people use the word immigrant in the same kind of tone and venom as they would use the N-word. You know, it's that same kind of classification. Do you feel that kind of underneath that kind of hatred underneath all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember a time where there's ever been such division. I mean, you've probably heard there's been 4,000 arrests in Minnesota, likely more now, but less than 14% have been these like hardcore criminals or anyone with a criminal record in these 4,000 arrests, right? I mean, a lot of them are fully legal immigrants who were pulled out of their cars on their way to work, dropping their kids off at school. And there has not been a very good reason why they were targeted. I think I never thought I'd see this, but at this moment, we've really had to rely a lot on these sponsors who are there to protect and care for their refugee neighbors or the people that they welcomed. And sponsors have been bringing families into their homes and signing, delegation of parental authority and being willing to take care of kids in case parents get detained. But we also have a majority of our sponsors are immigrants themselves. They are permanent residents or they are citizens, first generation, second generation immigrants. And over the past few months, I've seen at a time when usually sponsors are the ones that are on the front lines and are really are able to do this work and make sure that our immigrant neighbors feel protection. They are being hunted down and targeted themselves.
Legal residents.
Never forget.
You mean the legal residents?
Oh yeah, legal residents and citizens, right? We had a sponsor from the Ethiopian community, a U.S. citizen who sponsored another Ethiopian a year or two ago. I got a call and they said, hey, the refugee newcomer got a letter. He has to appear at the federal, the Whipple building. And if he goes, he's going to get detained. And so would you be able to go and bring the letter and ask for a rescheduling until we have time to find an attorney? And I was on my way to the airport. I was flying out to DC and I said, I'm so sorry, I can't go, but why don't you have, you go for him or send someone in your community to go out? And they said, we can't go because we're also immigrants. Do you know any white person that could go and deliver this letter? And and that resonated so much. I'm like, do I know a white person that can deliver a letter because at least we won't get detained? I mean, of course I do, right? But it was just, it stood out to me so much. And the man ended up going. I'm not a legal attorney, or I'm not an immigration attorney. I feel like I say that every 30 seconds these days. So I cannot give that advice. But I did say, I don't think you should go. If you go without an attorney, you likely will be detained and you will likely be transferred to Texas within 90 minutes and we won't know where you are. But at the end of the day is you have the agency of choice. So you need to make that choice. And he said, I'm sick of being hunted. I'd rather test my fate. ICE had shown up at his door a few times. He knows his rights. He didn't answer. He went in without an attorney. He was detained. He was gone for 3 weeks. The stories are horrific. But that's where people are right now.
Do you hear yourself? I mean, you're describing law enforcement. You're describing federal law enforcement basically breaking laws, detaining people who are here legally, who have every right to be here. I don't remember a time in this country where I was afraid whether or not I would be arrested for no criminal reason. You're saying that 3 weeks of my life I got to spend in a detention facility without any rights, without any say, and I wasn't even supposed to be detained. I didn't do anything wrong.
And I mean, exactly. It's bizarre, right? This my organ. I mean, I'm a community member here, right? But I'm also run an organization that protects refugees. So my personal and professional identities collide a lot here. We were in touch with his wife and his sponsor while he was detained. We made sure his car payment was made and his rent was made. He's the income earner of the family. His wife had 2 little kids at home, a 2-month-old. We were sending them groceries. But yeah, I mean, the way
What
that
did he do
story
wrong?
ended,
What did he do wrong?
nothing. He'd applied for a green card. His green card was in process. He had just gone in for what's called a biometric screening, one of the steps of the process. We don't know why we don't know why he was called in. We don't know why ICE was going to his door. Does not have a criminal record. And he did, he finally got released. But the way that it unfolded was he was sent to Texas. He was woken up at 2 a.m. He was wrapped with heavy metal chains around his chest. They shackled his feet. They put him in a car, did not tell him where they were taking him. He was taken to the airport, brought to Minnesota. And little does he know, I mean, he's getting on a plane. He has no idea where he's heading. And then he was released at 3 a.m. But released at 3 a.m. means pushed out the door of the Whipple building in Minneapolis in the cold in January. He got to make a call to his sponsor, who, of course, jumped in the car and went. But it's bizarre. I mean, I keep going back to that word because it goes beyond just cruel or disorganized. It is just frankly bizarre.
There are court rulings now coming down that the administration is in violation of court orders in the way that they're handling people, incarcerating people, not releasing people, not deporting people. There are court orders to release people or not to put them on planes, but the administration is not abiding by court orders. They're certainly not abiding by, use of force protocols, the way that they're supposed to detain people, arrest people, treat people, release people in the middle of the night or 3 o'clock in the morning. It's kind of a free-for-all. And I think Minnesota, obviously, in the last month or so, has been a place where we have seen all of that. I asked you when I first talked to you, are you okay?
I have to say, I've never experienced the whiplash of emotions. I mean, I will say I haven't felt this level of rage since I was a college freshman and watching the Iraq War unfold. But I vacillate between rage and pride and despair and resolve. Look, I've never been so proud to be a Minnesotan. But I'm also a mother during this time. I'm a sponsor of an Afghan family where these little girls haven't been to school in a month, and the mom hasn't left her apartment in 2 months, and her mental health is crumbling at that, as it would for anyone. But I'm sure you've heard this, but we're just exhausted. We're really, really tired. And I don't know how this story ends.
Tom Homan has said that he's released 1,000 or so federal agents from the state. I'm assuming the raids are still going on, maybe a little bit more underhanded. We don't see the big show of force that you used to, but it's still happening, right?
It's still happening. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, we are seeing much less in Minneapolis, but ICE is now in many of the suburbs that probably thought that they were exempt from some of these operations. We know that it's not the fatigues anymore. Many ICE agents are walking around in disguise. They're changing up their vehicles, but the word on the street is they just opened a new office in one of our western suburbs. So the idea that there is a retreat, I mean, we haven't seen it yet. And I have hope. I have hope that we will have some sort of retreat, but it's going to take so many years to rebuild trust. I mean, our business sector is decimated. The need is so big and so strong, and our community has been holding others up, and I think it's going to continue that way, right? Like, the mutual aid happening is so incredible, but like people are tired, and also we can't do it all, right? We've been pushing for an eviction moratorium for several weeks, have not seen anything. We also lost two of our, we lost two community members, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, they're dead. And they were Minnesotans, and they matter. And I don't know how we can fully trust society and our governments again, right? And then you just talk about like the generational trauma, kids at bus stops watching their parents get arrested and thrown into cars. Like it's going to take decades to rebuild, I think.
It's not back to normal, obviously.
It's not back to normal. No, not at all. You go outside and you could probably hear a whistle somewhere. So no, it's not back to normal.
You are in the middle of this space. You are building and trying to grow an organization that welcomes the stranger, people from foreign countries. You are advocating on behalf of immigrant rights. You are trying to find sponsors. You're trying to raise money. But you're up against this. I mean, I would almost think that you'd want to kind of close shop for a little while and maybe take a long vacation or something, because it's impossible work. It sounds like impossible work. The rhetoric out there is not welcoming, and the administration at every turn is trying to make your life harder.
Our communities can thrive with immigrants. Like, this isn't about just like helping the stranger, right? This isn't us doing our just living out our faith or doing this because it makes us feel good. No, because when you integrate immigrants successfully, it comes back tenfold into your community, right? And so that's what we want to be doing right now. And instead, like I said, we're paying people's rent, and we're connecting people to legal aid, and we're delivering groceries and doing people's laundry because they can't leave their homes. So yeah, I mean, every day gets harder. Every single day gets harder. And I don't think it has to be this way.
No, I actually think that that's part of the problem, is that we haven't solved this for a long time. We have scapegoated immigrants either directly, like the administration is now, or indirectly by not giving them a voice, not giving them rights, not giving them a path to legalization, not allowing them to come in and work and go back home, whatever it might be to corrupt the asylum process. We have not fixed this issue for so long. So here comes Trump, basically standing on the shoulders of other administrations and doing what he's doing, because we haven't fixed this problem. We haven't solidified it. So I think we're seeing the result of a real discrediting of what it is to be immigrant in this country for a long time. But it seems to be an attack at blue states.
Yes. I mean, like I said, Minnesota, like and the thing is, Minnesota's like not as blue as it once was, right? I'm a true Minnesotan. I have a cabin in a rural area that is very red, right? And so and it's really difficult at this moment because, yeah, while I think they were targeting Minneapolis, the ICE activities have impacted every town and city across Minnesota. I mean, my small community where my cabin is has also lost community members and had community members taken by ICE, and it has totally rocked them. And so I truly wish the silver lining in all of this is being able to find some unity and some common ground, but I don't know if we can find that, right? And immigration just continues to be it will continue to be a flashpoint. But I do think that when when the administration decided to send people in and target Minnesota, it was about Minneapolis, knowing that we are very civically engaged. We love our immigrant neighbors. We are quite blue. And we've seen, I mean, historically, this Minnesota is not the first time ICE has come to town, right? Chicago, LA, Portland, Maine, has been since us, right? All blue states and cities.
Right. I'm hearing rumblings of San Diego, California being next. So,
yep.
For the last bit of our conversation, if I can ask you, it's bleak to me. What's next? I'm seeing the administration buying warehouses to put more and more detainees. I'm seeing them try and skirt the law with the things that we started this conversation with sort of removing rights for refugees or trying to make asylum seekers not be able to find a job or whatever it is. It just seems like they're just keep tightening the screws. If they're not doing massive for the camera raids in Minneapolis, they're going to find other ways to make it more difficult. And I don't see them letting up at all. They have 10,000 more ICE agents still coming on board. So what do you do with what you do for a living and what you do to advocate on behalf of immigrants and refugees? How do you manage?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, we just have to make sure that people feel protected. I mean, number one, right, you're talking about people who came through a humanitarian pathway because the U.S. was a place of refuge. And so being able to offer that to folks and then ensure it. I mean, I have, you hear a lot about moral injury. I have really felt that over the past 2 months of, wow, I helped almost 7,000 refugees find refuge in the United States in the last few years. Did I make the right choice? Did I set them up to fail? I mean, I've had to personally grapple with that. But I believe I did. I believe.
Wait, can I ask you a little question about that? Sorry to jump in. I just want to. Are you saying because you have advocated for them in a country that is not welcoming them anymore, and is actually doing them harm, right?
Yeah, going back to the family I sponsor from Afghanistan, picking them up and welcoming them at the airport in September 2024 was such a sacred time. After all they had been through, last summer we celebrated Hadia's birthday at the nearby lake. That is what this is supposed to be about, right? And now she's not in school. She doesn't feel safe. And I feel very conflicted with that, right? I just never thought we'd be in this place. And so my biggest priority is to make sure she feels safe and to make sure she can go to school again. I owe that to her, and I think our country owes that to her. From here, it's about telling these stories, telling the stories of immigrants and how they do make our communities better and how they thrive and finding common ground, right? I very much know I'm in an echo chamber in Minneapolis, but there are amazing immigrant stories happening all over the nation in small towns. And then I also just think we have to find common ground. If it is about the economy, if it is about jobs, tying immigration to labor pathways, making sure that immigration doesn't just feel so top down and that it's not the federal level pushing it on communities and states, and making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. The states have a seat at the table. Municipalities have a seat at the table, right? Small governments have seats at the table to say, this is what we actually need. This is what we have capacity for. This is what we want for our communities, and build a new blueprint from there. I think that's our only shot.
To reform the system from the bottom up, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What are your immediate needs? I know that you probably could use donations, volunteers, sponsors. What is it that you're trying to fill in the gaps with right now?
no one in Minnesota was ready for this. We could have never imagined that Operation Metro Surge was going to happen like this. And we learned by, we had to learn on the fly. And we've learned a lot. We've made a lot of mistakes, but now it's about making sure other communities are prepared in case the same thing happens to them. And I don't even mean ICE raining in on them and coming at them with the same intensity and force as they did in Minneapolis, but making sure sponsors and refugees feel as prepared as possible for the new age of immigration here, right? And so that is really what I'm focused on right now, making sure that sponsors in Pittsburgh and San Diego feel like they have done what they need to do in case tomorrow they are faced with the same situation, right? And that's making sure people are filing for their green cards. That's making sure people are getting consultations with immigration attorneys. That's making sure that they have a safety plan for childcare in case someone's detained. All of that, of course, takes dollars. So yes, we are in need of donations. I mean, I will say, again, the dichotomy of emotions over the last few months have been so intense. When this was in the news, day in and day out, we were flooded with support. All eyes were on Minnesota. I mean, I put out something on my social media and I woke up in the morning, I had $6,000 in my Venmo. It was amazing, right? But we need to make sure that people have legal aid and mutual aid because we cannot depend on anyone else right now. And I have to say, I never thought I'd say this, but God bless the lawyers. I will never make another joke about lawyers in my life. They are holding us up right now. They are taking care of, my neighbors. But yeah, I mean, what we need most right now is financial support to make sure other communities feel supported and protected.
Last question, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate the conversation, and it's difficult. I can hear it. I can hear it in the way you're describing how your state has just been so, I don't know, catastrophically treated by the federal government. You have probably two of the biggest advocates that I could see as far as leaders go in your state and in your local government, at least in Minneapolis, with Mayor Frey and with your governor. And they screamed pretty loud into the cameras and denounced what was happening and with profanity and everything else. And it got people's attention, but it didn't seem to move the needle. The federal government still did what the federal government was going to do. I think that this is going to be reliant on you and me and people. The other thing that I saw about your state, which I see in Los Angeles, is that the people gathered and organized and said no more, regardless. They put their bodies on the line for the most part. So how do we fix this is the last question. I'm sorry to leave you with that.
The joke in Minneapolis is our local sex shop is doing much more than our mayor, right? Smitten Kitten down the road has raised so much money and done more for our community than our mayor, who's on his media parade right now, and I'm damn proud of them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take you and me. It's the moms patrolling the bus stops, right? But I do think if anything comes out of this, we did write a blueprint on how communities respond, right? How to protect your neighbors, how to push back peacefully, how to stand firm without arms and without violence and force retreat. And I think that other community, I think that's what it's going to take. And I don't think we can't depend on others right now. And there's something quite beautiful in that too.
I think you're in the right space. You're the right person for the right time for doing what you do with your background. Thank you for your time. I hope I don't have to call on you again to ask you what's going on in your state, but I may.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to The Raid, available wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about our guests and the subjects we cover, please visit our website at theraidpodcast.org.